All right, so Revelation chapter 5, and if Revelation is a roller coaster and the seven churches are going up the back half of the roller coaster, we're just coming over the hump and starting the drop down because from here, everything is going to start picking up speed and the intensity of it is going to keep stepping up. So we looked last week at chapter 4, where we had this focus on the grandeur of the throne and the one seated on the throne. Chapter 5 picks that up and then continues to advance that as we move forward. And as we go forward, what we'll keep in mind, this is linked again to the seven churches, because as we're looking at the seven churches, we remember the seven churches and the problems that they're dealing with are in a very specific way addressed by what we see in the rest of the book. So we'll think about that some as we consider some of the applications in chapter 5. Chapter 5 is chock full of symbols and allusions. And so as we go through this, we'll talk through a number of the allusions there. You have several of them listed if you have your notes. And the Old Testament reference that are associated with those. But again, most of those we're going to go through as we go through the text, as we work through it. But just you have the references there if you want to go back and look at it at some point later. But one of the points that I'll make as we go through is that it's easy to look at Revelation and you see all these symbols and you see all these strange pictures, and it's really easy to go, I have absolutely no idea what this is talking about. And yet, a lot of the times, we'll see the symbols actually explained in the text. And a lot of times, we'll see that if we understand the Old Testament and where it's being pulled from, we'll get at least a pretty good sense of what John is communicating with that symbol. So with that, let's go ahead and read Revelation chapter 5. And then we are going to be all set to jump in and see what does this mean. So Revelation chapter 5. Chapter 4 has just finished. We have the living creatures, the 24 elders worshiping the one who sits on the throne. Worthy are you, our Lord and our God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and because of your will they existed and were created. So that's the backdrop. That's where we left off. And with that ringing in the background, chapter 5. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and to break its seals? And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the book or to look into it. Then I began to weep greatly because no one was found worthy to open the book or to look into it. And one of the elders said to me, stop weeping. Behold, the Lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. And I saw between the throne within the 4 living creatures and the elders a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. When he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. Then I looked and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne, and the living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing." And every created thing which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth and on the sea and all things in them, I heard saying, "To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever." And the four living creatures kept saying, "Amen." And the elders fell down and worshiped. So even just as we read through this, we have a sense of the grandeur of what's taking place. Even if you look at it and initially you say, "I'm not exactly sure what's going on," but whatever it is intense. The purpose of this section, and we're going to see as we go through the book of Revelation, there's these alternating cut scenes that take place as we move through the book. And so we start out in heaven because a right understanding of anything is going to start with a right understanding of God. And so we start with this understanding of God and what's going on in heaven. This sets the stage for everything that follows. And then we're going to see there's this back and forth. So chapters 6 and 7, we move to the earth. Chapter 6, we're on the earth. Chapter 7, we move back to heaven. Chapter 8, chapter 9, we move back to the earth. Chapter 10, we get a heavenly perspective. Chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, we get this earthly perspective. 15 and 16, we're moving back into heaven. 17, 18, we're back on the earth. 19, it all kind of comes together. And then 20, 21, and 22 is everything together because now God dwells among men. And so you have this group, this section of 2 chapters, which is designed to show what is actually going on as we move into the rest of the book, and you see this chaos and you see this confrontation and conflict, and you see death and destruction and judgment and confusion all over the place. Chapters 4 and 5 set up what is actually going on in the midst of all this chaos. Is it that the world has gone out of control? Or is it that God is operating his predetermined plan and unfolding his rule on earth? And chapter 5 really drives that home. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the text here. Let's start unpacking it. So let's start with verse 1. "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals." All right, let's set the scene here a little bit. So we remember we've looked at the throne and we've seen here's the throne, here's the one who is all power, all wisdom, all presence, who is sitting there on the throne, and he has in his hand this, your translation may have book, it may have scroll. I think scroll is probably the best translation of that. So you have this book that's in God's right hand. Now, obviously, right hand, most people are right-handed, the hand of power. So this is emphasizing God's power that's associated with what he is holding. We get some details about the book. It's written on the inside and on the back. So unlike most scrolls of that era where you would just write on one side and then you would roll it up, instead, you have writing that's on both sides, front side and back side. So we go, okay, well, that's interesting. That's probably significant. And then we have the fact that it is sealed with 7 seals. Now, again, in our mindset, you know, when we have books and we hear sealed with 7 seals, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's some discussion as to what this actually looks like, but perhaps one of the best would be if you have a scroll that's rolled up And each time it's rolled, there's another seal put on it. It's rolled again, another seal is put on it. Rolled again, another seal is put on it. 7 times until finally you have this scroll that is sealed like that 7 times. Apparently, from what several commentators were mentioning, seems that that was common practice with last wills and testaments to be rolled up and sealed in the presence of 7 witnesses. And so if that's the case, then what you have is this scroll that is sealed up, and you would break the first seal and you would unscroll it and you would read the first page. Then you would break the second seal, you would unscroll it some more, you'd read the second page. And you just keep doing that until you had opened up the entire scroll. What then do we know about the scroll? I'm like, okay, so it's a scroll. Obviously, we know from the rest of the chapter, this seems to be really important, but why is it so important? Well, with Revelation, anytime you have something that seems to be complicated, one of the first questions in your mind should be, is there something in the Old Testament that helps us understand what this is? Lo and behold, there is. So if we turn back to Ezekiel chapter 2, I'll try to keep us focused, but we're going to be doing a little bit of back and forth between the Old Testament and New Testament. If you want to have one place to stick your finger, it would be Daniel 7, because John draws heavily from Daniel 7 all throughout this chapter. You'll see that as we go forward. But in Ezekiel chapter 2, we'll start with verse 8. Ezekiel's being called to be a prophet to the people, to proclaim God's message to the people. And here he says, "Now you, son of man, listen to what I am speaking to you. Do not be rebellious like that rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I am giving you." Then I looked, and behold, a hand was extended to me, and lo, a scroll was in it. And when he spread it out before me, it was written on the front and the back, and written on it were lamentations, mourning, and woe. John, when he describes a scroll that's written on the front and the back, is drawing from Ezekiel chapter 2. We've seen in chapter 4, he draws heavily from Ezekiel and from Daniel. We'll see that throughout. But here's Ezekiel, and he has the scroll. What's on the scroll? It's judgment that is about to be poured out. So when we come then to Revelation and we see John pulling on the same imagery, okay, so here's a scroll, it's written on the front and the back. You're a Jewish person steeped in the Old Testament, you're thinking, like Ezekiel, like the judgment that was going to be poured out because of sin. And so we look at this and we know this is in part a proclamation of judgment. So keep that one part of your brain. Let's move to another passage, because we get another picture, another aspect of what this scroll involves. So it involves judgment, but we also see in Daniel 7, told you we would be going there a lot. Daniel 7, we have this picture given in verses 13 and 14. I'm going to read through this. And as we go through Revelation 5, since we've already read through it, you're probably going to see this. There's correlation between verses 13 and 14 of Daniel 7 and what we read in Revelation 5. So Daniel 7, 13 and 14, Daniel says, "And I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days." Okay, so here is the Son of Man, here's the Messiah who comes up, approaches the Ancient of Days, like we see in Revelation 5, and was presented before him. And to him, at his presentation before the Ancient of Days, was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, so that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. Okay, so you get the picture here. Son of Man comes up to the Ancient of Days, and then he is presented with a kingdom. In Revelation 5, we have this scroll. We have the Lamb who comes, the Son of Man, Messiah, Jesus, who then comes up to God and who then receives this scroll. There's a parallel between the scroll that is given to the Lamb and the kingdom, the power and dominion that is given to the Son of Man in Daniel. So these two passages parallel each other closely. So what is the scroll then? The scroll then is in part judgment. Well, okay, so is it judgment just for the sake of judgment? Just punish sin and we're going to turn all unbelievers into smoking craters, and then that's just kind of that? Well, no, because the other part of it is that judgment is so that Jesus Christ fully then takes possession of what is his kingdom. So it is both judgment and it is, as it were, the deed to all creation. That's what the scroll is. One of the things this emphasizes to us, this is really, really helpful in stabilizing us as we're going through the seal judgments and the trumpet judgments and the bowl judgments, is we look at the judgments and we see this is happening. People are suffering. Believers are being martyred. Why? Because God is unfolding his eternal plan, step by step by step. And that eternal plan ends with Jesus Christ reigning directly over all creation. Not to the application yet, but there's tremendous application there, especially when we look around the world, when we look within our own country, when we see evil, when we see oppression, when we see suffering, when we see death, martyrs, whatever the case may be. We can look at that and we can look at it by purely human eyes and say, this isn't right, this is horrible, how could this be happening? And yet even Revelation 5:1 helps us understand what is happening. God is unfolding his plan step by step that ultimately ends in Jesus Christ reigning over all creation. So it's an inheritance. It is an exercise of judgment. Let's take a look now at verses 2-4. So here's the throne. Here's the one seated on the throne. Here's the scroll that is recognized as this is, in essence, the key to making all things right. John is there. He is under the Emperor Domitian. He's seeing the suffering that is taking place. He's on the Isle of Patmos for preaching the gospel. So he knows suffering. He sees evil. And his desire is that Jesus Christ would come back and reign directly over all creation. But that hasn't happened yet. Well, now suddenly he's having this vision where he's looking and he sees, as it were, right in front of him, here is the answer, the solution, all sin gone, Jesus reigning directly, hope, joy, eternal life, and it's right there. And then you have verses 2-4. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and to break its seals? Yeah, who can do this? Because once that scroll is unscrolled, everything is set right. So who can do it? Questions asked. And no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the book or to look into it. Top to bottom search, heaven, believers who have died on the earth, anybody who is still alive under the earth, people who are unbelievers and dead. Basically, from top to bottom, we look and there's no one who is able to set creation right. That then helps us to explain John's reaction. He begins to weep greatly. Why? Because no one was found worthy to open the book or to look into it. He weeps because let's think about chapter 4. He has seen the one who is seated on the throne. He's seen him directly. He's seen Jesus Christ in chapter 1 in his glory. Within John's heart, there would be this passionate desire of, I want to see him reigning directly. That would be so much better than anything else. Him receiving the worship that is due, all creation being set right, Satan being crushed, sin, death, and the devil being put away for forever. And that's not happening. If the scroll can't be opened, God's plan stands unfulfilled. And it would seem that God's creation is going to be marred by evil for forever. So John weeps. We have a couple Old Testament echoes here. Verse 2, when it talks about the strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, this is actually a reference back to Daniel 4, verses 13 and 14. Verse 23, when there's an angel who comes down and proclaims judgment. John is actually pulling from the Septuagint, but the verbiage between the Greek Septuagint and what he says here is very similar. So there's this emphasis, again, on the judgment that the scroll is going to let loose. Reading Beale while he was talking about this, he made an interesting observation. He said this scroll, the right to reign over all creation, originally that was assigned to the first Adam. Adam was supposed to reign over all creation as it were a kingdom of a priest. And we all know what happened. Adam sinned. Adam failed. Adam's now no longer reigning over creation. He is now under the judgment that's described in the scroll. So we have something of a catch-22 because it needs to be a human who opens it because mankind is supposed to reign over creation. And yet all mankind is under the judgment of this scroll. You see the problem set here? So nobody is worthy to open the scroll. And John weeps as a result. Verse 5, and then one of the elders said to me, stop weeping. Behold, the Lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. Okay, let's think about this a little bit. So here's the elder, one of the 24 elders who worships before the throne of God, comes to John and says, stop weeping because the Lion from the tribe of Judah, the root of David. Yeah, we got some Old Testament reference there. Anybody know offhand where those come from? I want to take a guess. Lion of Judah. Yeah, when Jacob is pronouncing the blessing on his sons. Genesis 49:49. there's this prophecy that's made. Start with verse 8. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down to you. There's this imagery of power and authority. Verse 9, Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He couches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who dares to rouse him up? Okay, so there's this imagery of Judah and lions. And then we come to verse 10. Speaking of Judah, the scepter, an imagery of ruling, shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Okay, so in Genesis 49, 9 and 10, we have Judah that's tied into this imagery of a lion who is a ruler who is going to rule until this enigmatic figure, Shiloh, comes, to whom all the peoples are going to submit themselves. The idea of the root of David. So we have the Lion of Judah, which is looking forward to the Messiah who is going to come. All people are going to bow before him in obedience, which is what John wants, by the way. The root of David, Isaiah 11. We have Isaiah saying, then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse. And a branch from his roots will bear fruit. Here's the root of David. Verse 10, then in that day the nations will resort to the root of Jesse, who will stand as a signal for the people, and his resting place will be glorious. Okay, so there again, we have the root of Jesse. Notably, Isaiah 11 is a prophetic text. It's looking forward. What's going to come? When are things going to be set right? When the root of Jesse comes, he is going to pour out judgment, and he's going to reign. There's going to be peace and righteousness. Sin is going to be rolled back. And so you have these 2 points in the Old Testament that both look far forward into the future, that someday Shiloh, the Lion of Judah, is going to come. Someday the root of Jesse is going to come, and all men will submit to him. And so John then pulls from that imagery and says, the Lion from the tribe of Judah, Genesis 49, the root of David, Isaiah 11, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. John, good news. Messiah is the one who is worthy to open it. The point's been made from top to bottom. All creation is under judgment and cannot save himself. You cannot save yourself from the judgment to come, but there is a Messiah who can open the seals and who can make all men submit to him. In verses 6 and 7, then I saw between the throne with the 4 living creatures, the cherubim, who are either right around the throne or actually physically supporting the throne. So I saw between the throne and the elders a lamb standing. So in the inner court area, right next to the throne, there's a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. Here's the Messiah. You have this imagery of a lamb who is standing there. Your translation has as if slain. Literally, it just reads as slain. A slain lamb standing there. The description of the lamb, again, if you have any familiarity with the Old Testament, you know that the imagery of lambs being slain is a prominent feature. Maybe the most prominent is what would take place at Passover. What do? You take a lamb and you slay it, and then because of the blood that is shed by that lamb, the angel of death and judgment passes over you because of the blood of the lamb. We see this as well in the burnt offering sacrifices. We see this in various various atonement rituals that take place in the Old Testament. Leviticus 1 would be a notable one. But you have this lamb that is then taken, sacrificed after your sins are confessed on it. It's slain, it's offered, and then it is completely consumed. And yet now, here we have a lamb who has been slain. So you have this imagery of sins have been forgiven, and yet he stands resurrected and alive, having paid for all the sins of those who trust in him. You have the description there, and again, the imagery, when you initially read it, you go, well, that sounds odd, but we need to understand how John is using language when he talks about 7 horns, 7 eyes. We've talked about some of this before. 7 horns. What is that getting at? Okay, military might, strength. We could go back to just the animal kingdom, and if you have 2 goats who are going at each other, or you have 2 rams or something that are fighting for whatever reason, which one typically wins? One with the bigger horns. Why? Because he's a bigger sheep, because he has more power. So the horn indicates power. If you have 7 horns, and 7 is just rife through the book of Revelation, and you go, yeah, you see it all the time. Yeah, you do, but there's actually the way John arranges it. If you start studying, you start unpacking, and you start digging into the details. He starts using 7 like all over the place. Groups of 7. He arranges his material by 7s. Things that aren't immediately apparent. Here we see it very directly. 7 horns, 7 being the completion. Okay, here's the completion of power, or the fullness of power. Here is the one who is all powerful. Here's the one who is omnipotent. And then we have 7 eyes, all seeing, omniscience. We even have the explanation here. 7 eyes are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. So this touches on both his omnipresence and his omniscience. And here is this one who is standing as slain, meaning that his death is also the basis for his victory. Why is this one able to stand before the throne? Is because he is the Lamb who's slain, who lives, who has paid in himself the price for all sin of all those who put their trust in him. And now he stands victorious. So Christ suffered, but he ultimately triumphed because of the suffering. He is the victor because of the cross. And so, by the way, just as a side note, for believers, as we follow our master through suffering, what do we know from passages like Romans 8? It is suffering that is the means to greater glory. And so we look at Christ, who has gone through supreme suffering, and he has supreme glory. And we can look at our lives now and say, okay, if I'm going through suffering as a follower of Jesus Christ, what does that mean? It means I'm becoming like my master. This is preparation for my victory. if we use the language from the first seven churches, overcoming. By God's grace, we will triumph through the suffering because that is what Jesus has done. Well, verse 7, we have Messiah, the Lamb, who then comes and takes the scroll from the one on the throne. As we've looked at, this references Daniel 7:13, which, by the way, I would point to and suggest that really emphasizes the future character of this passage. Let me explain that. Okay, so in Revelation 5, we have the Lamb who comes, takes the scroll, and then we're going to see he takes authority over all creation. If we flip back to Daniel 7, we can make an observation. We've looked at verses 13 and 14, so we see this parallel passage. The Son of Man comes up to the Ancient of Days, and then presented to him is dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away. His kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. In Daniel 7, when Jesus receives, as it were, the scroll, which Daniel describes here as authority, power, dominion, glory, might, when that happens, what's the effect? Verse 14, all peoples, nations, and men of every language serve him. That hasn't happened yet. If you need a source, I would say just check CNN. We are in active rebellion against him as a planet, as a people, as mankind. But we can also take a look at the rest of chapter 7. And we see something interesting because Daniel gets his vision interpreted. So Daniel sees the Son of Man coming up to the Ancient of Days, receiving all authority, and he wants clarity, and an angel provides him an explanation. And so the angel describes what's happening. He talks about the different beasts that were described there. And then he talks about, in verse 23, there's this fourth beast, which is a fourth kingdom. Going to have these 10 kings that arise. He goes through and he gives what we could describe as specific geopolitical occurrences. A king arises, 10 kings arise, they subdue 3 kings. You have this one king who stands out. He speaks against the Most High. He wears down the saints of the Highest One. He tries to alter times and in law. The believers, and we know from later in chapter 8, chapter 9, this involves all believers around the world, are given into his hand for time, times, and half a time. So there's this specific historical event where this man is going to arise and he is going to seek to destroy all Christians around the world, and he is going to wear them down. They are going to be given into his hand, which we're going to see that's the description that we see in Revelation 6 and in Daniel 9. But, verse 26, the court will sit for judgment, and his dominion, the dominion of this man, Antichrist, will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. When does that happen? Well, it's when Messiah takes authority over all creation. What's the effect? Verse 27, then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms of the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. So don't miss what's going on here. Daniel gives two pictures of what does it look like at the end, one from kind of a heavenly perspective, one from kind of an earthly perspective. From the heavenly perspective, Son of Man takes authority from the Ancient of Days and rules, and all creation serves him. From the earthly perspective, here's this man, Antichrist, who is wearing down the saints. They are given into his hands, but then God's judgment comes, his authority is taken away. And how long is it taken away for? Forever. And then what happens? Authority is given, now this is interesting, is given to the saints, the people of the Most High. How much? All the sovereignty, dominion, and greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. Okay, so when we go through Revelation, and Revelation is talking about the saints' reign, what does that mean? From Daniel 7, the implication is very, very clear. Reigning does not mean we are reigning in some quasi-spiritual sense. It doesn't mean like the Christian in Nigeria who is getting gunned down by Islamists can say, well, actually, I'm reigning. Why? Because reigning implies authority and power. What Daniel makes very clear is that when the saints reign, all authority on everywhere in the planet of all kingdoms, dominions under the whole heaven is given to them. This is complete and total geopolitical power, and it happens after Antichrist is taken away. I would suggest that it is exceedingly clear when we look at this that the reign is going to be a physical geopolitical reign. And that takes place when? When Jesus takes the scroll, when he receives authority from the Ancient of Days, Daniel 7, 13, and 14. When does that take place? That's described in Revelation 5. So you have these three passages, you put them all together, it has to be a physical kingdom. It has to be at the very end, after Antichrist is destroyed, it has to be in the future. That has not happened yet. We are not yet reigning. Not in the sense that Daniel 7 describes. And so this helps clue us into what are we looking at with Revelation 5 and everything that follows. This is the final unfolding of God's judgment as he exercises the day of the Lord and brings all creation into subjection to him.
Let me ask a quick question.
Sure.
In regards to the reign, Christ said that his kingdom began when he went to the cross and died. There was something different. Was there a reign that began then when Christ's kingdom came into play after he went and sat at the right hand of God? Things were different.
Mm-hmm.
Do some say that's when the reign starts? His kingdom started then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is an aspect where his kingdom is inaugurated. Because all authority is given to me in heaven and on earth. and then go and make disciples. And so in that regard, Jesus is king. However, is he directly reigning over all creation like Daniel 7 describes, where all peoples, nations, tribes, and tongues are in subjection to him? Not yet. So there's that already not yet tension. But what Daniel 7 is describing is a future in which it's not just spiritual, but it is physical on earth. The king's city hall, the state governors, they are all bowing down to Jesus, saying, he is king, because they are Christians, because all authority has been given to them of all kingdoms, all dominions under the whole heaven. Because of that, when we look at that, we can say, okay, that is a future reality that has not yet occurred. And then when we look at John, we see he's pulling that same imagery because he's describing the same event. The future reigning of Christ, the exercise of the day of the Lord. And so that would be one passage that I would, actually three passages that I would point to that together, I would argue, require this to be set in the future.
So Tim, you're saying to Jerry's question, yes, that's true, but this has not yet happened.
Yes. So there's the already not yet tension that is taking place.
Inauguration of the kingdom in the authority of Jesus, which is displayed in the church, but the not yet rule and reign of Jesus and his saints over all the earth from the earth.
Yeah, because what is Christ doing right now? People are getting saved, so entering the kingdom of God. They're getting sanctified, which is equipping and preparing them for what? For the time when Jesus returns, when the master returns to his people and says, you have been faithful over your 1 talent and you've received 10 talents. Here are your 10 cities. You will reign. That's the imagery that Jesus is pulling on when he describes in Luke 19. Julie.
I was just wondering if there's kind of precedence for this in the Old Testament with David, in that he was king over Judah, but it was like 10 years before all of Israel actually submitted to him. And I know that might not necessarily be prophetic, but I've always thought it was kind of an odd coincidence that, like, why did God wait to make the rest of Israel submit to him for so long?
I'm going to say that is a really interesting observation. And I would say that there are enough parallels that draw from patterns in the Old Testament that I would be, I'll say, hesitant to say that's not the case. There very well may be a parallel that's drawn there. To be honest, I have not seen that, but or seen that in the literature as they're discussing it. That would be something that would be interesting to look up.
Maybe
It establishes a pattern. Yeah, very possibly so. You have the lesser type and the anti-type. Bev.
So that passage in Daniel 7, he's specific about the three, the time and times and not time, 3.5 years, right? It's trying to wear down the saints. It sounds like they're there. Is this a passage that people use for that the rapture doesn't happen before?
It would go into a cluster of passages that would be pointed to say, well, believers are going to go through the tribulation. Now, the pushback would be, well, that doesn't require, the church can be raptured out. People are going to get saved during the tribulation, and maybe that's what's being talked about. So in the end, that passage can end up kind of being a stalemate because either side can use it. But suffice it to say, at a minimum, what we do know is there's going to be a lot of believers. They're going to be severely afflicted to the point where if they were allowed to continue, they would be completely wiped out. And yet they are only given into the hand of Antichrist for 3.5 years, as you referenced. And then God comes in judgment, takes away all of his authority, consigns him to, describes how he is slain, thrown into the eternal fire, and then all authority is given to the saints, and by derivation to the Messiah. When Christ takes the scroll, really good questions, by the way, so thank you. When Christ takes the scroll, in verse 7, we could think of it in this way. This is the culmination of everything that every prayer you have ever truly prayed has finally taken place. Like, this is where everything that you have hoped for, everything that you have been waiting for, the agony when you're praying, he is sick, please heal him. She's unsaved, please heal her. Please restore her, please save. All of them ultimately in different ways are expressing, Lord, would you take control over all creation and reign as things are supposed to be? Would you remove evil forever and always? And would you alone be the one who is worshiped and glorified? Like, that is the heart cry of every believer. And that's the echo of every prayer that's ever prayed. And here, finally, at long last, after 6,000 years and change, whatever that is, Jesus Christ is finally about to take the step that everybody's been waiting for. And so when you see this moment, Jesus taking the scroll, it's just about to happen. It's like if you've been, I don't know, if you've been at a concert or major event and everybody's just waiting and waiting and waiting, and maybe there's a delay in the start and everybody's just excited and the air's electric and everything, and finally the person steps out front that you've been waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks to see, and you've been there in the congregation. It's like, it's starting. Here it is. That's a microcosm of cosmically what is taking place here. And so you have these shock waves of praise that occur. And you'll see John describes it in the inner court praises, the outer court praises, and then all creation praises. So it's like this blast radius of praise coming to Jesus Christ, because finally things are going to be set right in salvation through God's judgment on sin. Verses 8 through 10, we have the inner circle. So starting with verse 8, and when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense. What are the incense? Thank you, John. He gives us an answer. The prayers of the saints. Again, ultimately, what every believer has been hoping for, longing for, praying for. Worship, praise, prayer. All of that is focused. You have these 24 elders who are now on their faces before the Lamb, singing a new song, which new song is Old Testament referent. Anytime you see new song, it's in respect to God acting on behalf of his people. And they sang a new song saying, okay, so here's the inner circle. Worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain. Why are you worthy? Because you were dead. You were crucified. Through your death, you purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. Why are you worthy? Because this is all about you and what you accomplished, Lord Jesus. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, when previously they were enemies. They will reign upon the earth. Why? Because of you. So the closest circle bows in worship. Jesus is worthy to reign because he stepped under the wrath of the Father as a sinless sacrifice, and through doing that, he purchased his people. And he became, through that, the one person who is worthy to take authority over all creation. The motif that's given in verse 10, that believers are going to reign, the motif of kingdom of priests, this again parallels Daniel 7, what the saints are given, what they are able to do. But the praise doesn't stop there, because in verses 11 and 12, now it extends to the outer circle. Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne, and the living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing." By the way, here's one of those less visible sevens. There's a sevenfold praise to God. The sevenfold praise to Jesus Christ. All praise, by implication, is given to him. Verse 11, again, I'll tell you, like, one of the things working through this, there are so many Old Testament references. I'm being selective as I go through here because there's so many allusions and pictures. Time would fail us if we tracked each one of them down. But here, one of them, the number of them was myriads and thousands of thousands. Anybody want to guess where that's from? Daniel chapter 7. Oh, very good. You guys have been paying attention. Daniel 7:10. Daniel 7:10. Let's start with verse 9. And I kept looking until the thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was like white snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were a burning fire. Then we come to verse 10. And a river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. And as he's being worshipped and praised, what do we see? Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. And the court sat, and the books were opened. Here's when Christ reigns. And again, I'd suggest that this points to a future time, because what we see in Daniel is a future time when the final judgment takes place. Verse 12, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. This is a reference back to 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verses 11 and 12, when David is charging Solomon to build the temple, and he's gathered up all the materials for the temple. And we have David in his prayer, who says, "Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty, indeed everything that is in the heavens and on earth. Yours is the dominion, O Lord. You exalt yourself as head over all. Riches and honor come from you. You rule over all, and in your hand is power and might, and it lies in your hand to make great and to strengthen everyone." That is 1 Chronicles 29, verses 11 and 12. And so here you have this apparent drawing from David's prayer. What is David praying for? We're about to build the temple. What happens at the temple? God dwells with his people. And so what do? We praise him for his glory and might and riches and power and all his awesomeness. Revelation 5, what are we anticipating? He has the scroll. What does this mean? It means God is about to dwell with his people. And so what do? We do what David did. We praise him for his power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. You give him all praise. And just one of the things that's interesting is the magnitude of the praise that's taking place here. Here we have thousands of thousands and myriads of myriads. That is in real contrast to, hey, John, I want you to write to 7 pitiful churches that are just barely eking out an existence, and they're doing just kind of a so-so job in most of the cases, and some of them are doing really lousy. So you have these 7 little flames that are flickering all over the place, and can not the temptation be sometimes to look and say, Lord, like, is this it? Like, you see the church, it's got problems, not real big. And yet here the imagery is thousands and thousands and myriads, an untold multitude that is praising God together. That's what God's accomplishing right now. That's what God is accomplishing right now through Berean. Is Berean massive and mighty? No. Do we have thousands upon thousands? Nope. Is anybody going, what does Berean think? Not outside of the local area. And yet here, in this place, right now, God is, as it were, generating a very small piece of what we see at the end of Revelation 5. All together, worshiping God, praising him forever and ever.
Tim, I hate to be a Debbie Downer to the high point that you're hitting right now. But I have a hermeneutical question. Verse 10. Is that also not bringing into what is fulfilled here that God also said that Israel was to be when they entered into covenant with him at Sinai with Moses?
So there again, we have what we see in multiple places already, where imagery that is applied to Israel is now related to the description of the saints. And so there is then a correlation there, which we have talked about in the past, where I would argue that it infers then that believers are grafted into Israel, and that's why the same language can be used for both multiple times throughout the New Testament.
So whether the church is grafted into Israel or some other kind of solution, either way, what we are wrestling with is if verse 10 does refer to what is promised in the Sinaitic covenant, it's now included here in the description that includes the church. Therefore, you're saying verse 10 explicitly teaches continuity between Israel and the church.
Yeah. Okay. What the church was intended to be. A kingdom of priests. And this is not the only place that that's described. We see that in 1 Peter. We see that in Revelation 1. We see that inferred in other places in the New Testament.
So that scratches Jerry's itch over there about the kingdom's inauguration. Because if this is attributed to the church, but it is in that sense finally in its completed form realized when these events occur, the church is the kingdom and priests to our God who reigns upon the earth in fulfillment of what was promised to Israel.
Yeah, so that goes back to the tension between the already and not yet. So Christ is building his kingdom right now. Are we reigning over all creation? Not yet. But that will come, and it comes as a derivative function of what verse 10 teaches.
And to play it out practically, so would Jerry tell his kids, Son, you were meant to be a kingdom and priest on this earth for Christ.
Mhm.
Okay. You need to believe the gospel so that you might be what he has made you and called you to be.
Correct. Which in the final state, the full expression of that involves when Revelation 5 takes place and Jesus takes authority and Antichrist is destroyed and everything else takes place. Now, here's the kingdom, reign over it, and all kingdoms, dominions, tribes, tongues are all authority is now given to the saints.
And then one more. You
Mhm.
earlier made you made a logical connection between present life of the Christian and the millennial life of the saints, such that in preparation for the millennial life, there needs to be the practice in the present life.
Yep.
So you would also say to your children, you don't have a lot of time. You need to make sure you learn how to be a kingdom and priest now, because that will correlate to what you do in the millennium.
Yeah. Paul talks about this in Philippians 1, where he talks about, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. Nevertheless, to continue on in the flesh is fruitful labor. That's the proper viewpoint. Do I want to go to heaven to be with the Lord? Yes. Do I sit there every day going, boy, I wish this were my last. Maybe this will be my last. I want to go to heaven. No. If I have a day, that is a day that I can spread some more seed. And if I have another day beyond that, I can spread a little bit more seed. And every day I have the opportunity to do that. And so every day that I'm given, every moment that I have is an opportunity to be improved, to improve my eternity. And what's described here. Most of the time, I don't think we're thinking like that. And that goes back to everybody thinks heaven is, kind of this monolithic, everybody walks on streets of gold all day long. That's not the reality. So we invest our time right now, understanding we are going to be a kingdom of priests that are physically reigning, and that's going to be associated with our life now. So expend your life now to become more like Christ. And you're going to start seeing in eternity what that implies. In the end, verses 13 and 14, the final shockwave has gone out, and it's all creation now that is praising and giving glory to God. Which, a couple observations. First of all, why does all creation exist? Answer, it exists to glorify God. Why are you sitting here today? It is because God made you to glorify him. That's your whole reason for operation. We get that so backwards sometimes. Why are you here? Make money, have a good family, achieve the American dream, get a golden retriever. Who knows? All kinds of things. There's a world of possibility. No, you're here for one reason only. You were created to glorify God. All creation was created to glorify God. Your purpose is to glorify God. So glorify God. You do that. You do your purpose. What's God's will for my life? Easy. To glorify him. Well, let's close with some application. So how then, as we look at this kingdom here, and then we're going to see this in contrast to the kingdom down below. How does this passage relate to the two kingdoms and Christ's supremacy? Well, we're going to see that in everything that follows, Christ has absolute supremacy overall, and he's using it to glorify himself. That's really helpful if you're one of the seven churches. You're suffering, or you're tempted to sin. It's like, hey, you could compromise with the world and things would get better. If you're understanding Revelation 5, you're looking at this going, that's like compromising with disease. Yeah, I'll take a little bit of disease because that'll make things so much better. Like, nobody says that. We want to live for Christ in sin, in suffering, whatever we're facing, we want to live for him. How then does that inform how we respond in present circumstances? Well, Do we, as Christians on planet Earth in Eastern North Carolina, do we have a terribly lot amount of authority and power right now? No, we don't. If you think you do, you don't. All you have to do is just run a red light and you'll see how much authority and power you have. Very, very little. We see the brokenness of sin in the world. I think just yesterday, there was supposed to be like a gay pride, something or other in Newburgh. So we see the effects of sin in this world. And yet, because of that, we have to remember what is true. What's true? The omnipotent, omniscient Messiah is going to take the scroll and he is going to open it. He has overcome because of his life, death, and resurrection. And so there is hope for us today, even in the worst of circumstances. And we can make the last observation here, and we'll close with this. Our eternity is that of praising the risen Lamb and participating in his glory throughout the new creation forever and ever. When we get to Revelation 21 and 22, we're going to have a lot of fun unpacking that. But any questions on what we've talked about so far? Next week, we get into chapter 6, which is where things get really interesting really fast. So with that, let's go ahead and pray and let you go.